You will bring these pages to Master Thaidakar. We are close, but so it appears are Ristaris' cronies. Despite the larger conflicts going on the greater Roshar between the human coalition and the forces of Odium, there are a lot of things going on underneath the surface and the underbelly of Roshar. Lots of secret societies that Brandon has told us about that we get to examine and look at, and they're quite fascinating. Who are they, and what are their overall goals? There are 5 to 6 main ones that Brandon has clued us in on. And this video, we're going to be talking about only one of them. But over a string of videos, we're going to be talking about all the different secret societies on Roshar. The main ones being the Ghostbloods, the Sons of Honor, the Skybreakers, the Versatilians, we have the Diagram, and we also have what's called the 17th Shard that's also going on Roshar, as well as the Greater Cosmere. This isn't to say that there aren't other societies going on Roshar that we don't know about yet. For example, the Aemeans aren't letting anyone into their island. Is there some type of organization that makes that happen? We don't know. Also, there's plenty of people that are working secretively that are working about their own purposes. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the Ghostbloods. So definitely going to have spoilers. For those of you who have not read any of the Stormlight archive, this is not the video for you. There'll be spoilers from the Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, spoilers from Oathbringer, as well as Arcanum Unbound and Mistborn series. Talking about the Ghostbloods. At first look, they look more like a criminal organization, very similar to what we might have here on Earth. The first time we meet the Ghostbloods is through Shallan in a double basement in the war camps, which kind of seems shady. The major association we have with the Ghostbloods is through Mraize, who's a character who we'll have a video on as well. Mraize and the Ghostbloods are intriguing, partly because of their mystery, but also because of how Shallan gets to meet them. So first she meets them in that double cellar, then she meets them out on the Shattered Plains in a pavilion that they somehow set up and then take down. She gets to meet him at Urithiru, as well as having several interactions via letter, and she also has several interactions with Iyatil, who is Mraize's Babsk, or master. At the first meeting of Mraize with Shallan, he tells her that the Ghostbloods have an overarching goal, but we don't get to know what that is. If you are to join us, you should understand, we are not like others you may have known. We have a greater purpose, and we are protective of one another. So what is that greater purpose? It's really hard to tell because of the Ghostbloods' distaste of morality. Morality is an axis that doesn't interest us, Mraize said calmly. Only loyalty and power are relevant, for morality is as ephemeral as the changing weather. It depends upon the angle from which you view it. You will see, as you work with us, that I am right. The Ghostbloods have a greater purpose, but they don't have morality. How those two things work together, I don't quite understand. Not knowing their purpose, do we even know that they're bad, right? At initial glance, we think that they're these terrible things, and yet at deeper looks, we quite don't even know if they're even bad. So what are the bad things that we know that the Ghostbloods did? We know that they killed Yasna, or hired someone to do so, and then of course there's the deal with Shallan's coachman that gets murdered, as well as the parchment that he owns. So those are two pretty terrible things, but if we look at it closer, they killed Yasna, the woman who's been assassinating people throughout the entire series, the woman who was going to kill her own sister-in-law, the woman whose huge character growth moment in the series so far has been just not killing her eclectic cousin. So obviously I could totally understand somebody wanting to off Yasna because of the unfeeling woman that she is, right? Also, the deal with the coachman, it kind of almost implies in Words of Radiance like it was an individual member of the Ghostbloods, like not the organization sanctioning that killing as a whole, just someone trying to protect their own skin when they knew that Shallan could recognize them with her drawing. At the pavilion, Shallan hears Mraize citing that their leader is Master Thaidakar. Thaidakar is only mentioned 2 other times in the entire Stormlight archive. One in the very first chapter, when Seth is assassinating King Gavilar. Gavilar thinks that Seth was sent by Master Thaidakar. Of course, he wasn't. Amaram also thinks that Helleran is being sent by Thaidakar to kill him. Poor Thaidakar getting blamed for everyone else's stuff. But if he's not doing all these other things, what is it that Thaidakar is actually working towards? What is he doing? And that's one of the things that we don't know. Something else of note when we have Thaidakar versus Rosharan, who is the head of the Sons of Honor, it kind of seems like they've got this Hatfield-McCoy issue going on, this bad blood between them. And I wonder if part of the reason that we have the Ghostbloods and the Sons of Honor is just to show kind of the pettiness of a small rivalry between Thaidakar and Rosharan. Because it kind of seems like they're working towards the same thing, but in a race with each other towards it. So is that their whole purpose, is just to show the pettiness of men? Could be. But Sanderson hardly ever just uses a character for one purpose. So I think there's going to be some larger lore that the Ghostbloods and the Sons of Honor help us understand. While we don't know who Thaidakar is or what his end goal is, we do know that the reach and the power of the Ghostbloods is quite big. What we know from the series, we know that the Ghostbloods are the ones that are setting up Shallan's father. Not only do they have a soulcaster, which we understand is really valuable, that they can just give to her dad to use in his estates, but he is in Yakaved, and then we know that Gavilar thought that Thaidakar is the one that was assassinating him in Kholinar. All the while, Amaran thought that they were assassinating him in the Alethi farmlands, showing a large geographical region. And that they would think that they were a strong enough group to assassinate the most powerful king in the world. Also, a pretty far-reaching effect. We also know that beyond Roshar, the Ghostbloods are a thriving organization. The presence of Iyatil and Mraze's collection helps show us that. Iyatil wears a mask that has grown into her skin. The only other time that we see somebody with a mask like that that's grown into their skin is on Scadrial, the world from Mistborn. In the second Mistborn era, when Wax and Wayne are going to see the bands of mourning, and the people that they run into start wearing masks, right? In the south of Scadrial. Iyatil's people are called hunters. And what is it that Mraize can only talk about always is the hunt, right? So it seems he's been indoctrinated into their culture. And it's pretty obvious that Iyatil and Mraize are world hoppers, moving from world to world. Other evidence is this is Mraize's collection of trophies, or we assume that they're Mraize's, that we see in the first meeting when Shallan meets with them in the basement in the war camps. And he's got those collections of all those things along the walls. These give us a pretty extensive rundown of their many travels. Other curiosities baffled her. A vial of pale sand, a couple of thick hairpins, a lock of golden hair, the branch of a tree with writing on it she couldn't read, a silver knife, an odd flower preserved in some kind of solution. There were no plaques to explain these mementos. That chunk of pale pink crystal looked like it might be some kind of gemstone. But why was it so delicate? If you're well read in the Cosmere, being able to identify where some of these things from shouldn't be too much of a problem for you. Well, there's also some of them that we really probably don't have any clue of. So, for example, let's start with a vial of pale sand. Pale or white sand, right? It's probably going to be this white sand from Taldane that we see in the book White Sand. The thick hairpins, not very sure, but for some reason it really reminds me of the Emperor's Soul and Cell. So it seems like they might have traveled to Cell, especially if they have traveled to all these other planets, that they've probably traveled to Cell as well. They have the golden locks of hair. When have we heard of golden locks of hair? Yeah, definitely the royal locks. That's on Nalthis in Warbreaker. Also in Warbreaker, they have lots of bright colors from all the dyes of the flowers, and he also has a flower that's in that solution. So Endowment uses her power, and investiture comes up through these flowers, and so it's very possible, and people have theorized on the internet that Mraize is in possession of the Tears of Edgeley, or one of those flowers that have investiture from Endowment. The silver knife, remind anyone of anything? If you've read Shadows of Silence in the Forest of Hell, when they're on the planet of Threnody, the silver is the only thing that can repel the cognitive shadows there. So what about silver makes it able to repel cognitive shadows? We don't really know, but we know that it has a power against some forms of investiture. So that Silver Knight is probably from Threnody. Also, when we see Mraize in the Tower of Urithiru and ELA Sadius's throne room, he has an aviar on his shoulder. Again, that also tells us that Mraize has probably traveled to the First of the Sun and the island of Patchy. Finally, we see that Mraize gives a raise to his washwoman for getting ether out of his Azish coat. Now, we don't know what ether is. There was a possible book that Brandon was going to write earlier in his career called The Aether of Night that was not taking place on Roshar, as we can assume. So probably from another planet on the Cosmere that we haven't heard too much about. So through all of this, we can be pretty clear that the Ghostbloods are not just involved on Roshar. Whether their main goal is there or not, we're not sure. But we can tell that they've been widely traveled across the Cosmere, which gives me an even greater curiosity towards what their actual goal is, if it's Cosmere-sized goal. Last thing I want to talk about the Ghostbloods is their name itself. Why are they called Ghostbloods? Ghosts don't have blood. So just trying to think, ponder. We know that there's the ghosts on Threnody or the cognitive shadows. But who is it that we know best in the Cosmere universe that is a ghost? And my first thought is Kelsier. We also know that Iatil, Mraize's Basque, or master, is from Scadrial, and that her people were saved by Kelsier. He was the one that gave them the power or the heating to be able to survive in the south of Scadrial. So we also know that he was probably their leader for a period of time. So is the Ghostbloods an extension of that? We don't know exactly. We also know that Kelsier is not the person to sit idly by and not be involved in things. And if he's still alive, what is he doing? He is going to be involved in some way or another. So he had a plot to take out the Lord Ruler. He had a plot to take out Ruin. He saw the Airi have a device that could take the power from another shard. So they were wanting to do that. Maybe Kelsier has a similar plot with Odium. Let me know what you think below, if you think it's a good theory, or if you have other theories about it, please comment below on what your thoughts on what this theory is, and subscribe if you like the video, and I'll see you next time.